In 1861, a British gunship, the Prometheus, threatened the Oba of Lagos. Oba Dosunmu acceded and handed over Lagos to the Queen of England. That heralded the ceding of Lagos Island to the British government. 11 years after the island was seceded, the British built this yard, which was originally built in mud with thatched roofs, but it kept on catching fire. So in their wisdom, they imported bricks from England at the cost of £16,000. Same year, they spent £700 on education in the colony to build this, the Broad Street Prison. 50 odd years ago, this used to be a maximum security prison where political prisoners were kept. The Lagos State Governor has deemed it fit to enshrine this site. And this site was, the concept for Freedom Park originated about 10 years ago as part of the Millennium projects being carried out by a group of architects called CIA, where we looked at the whole of Lagos Island as a project. And my team took on this site, and the idea was to create a memorial park out of it. And 10 years later, it's become a reality. So, welcome to prison.
With the annexation and subsequent colonization of Lagos, and then the larger Nigeria, a formal system of control was imposed through the introduction and administration of the British common law and relevant ordinances, which were further entrenched by the establishment of civil institutions. Equally, a colonial constabulary was created to enforce order and protect the British and their economic interests, both in Lagos and the hinterlands. It was from this matrix that the British launched a system of control, the criminal justice system. The British colonial government in 1876 passed the Prisons Ordinance, and this system brought with it the notions of convicts and criminals, which were not how offenders were perceived in the local system through the ages. The colonial constabulary, as a first instance of a policing force in the area that later came to be regarded as Nigeria, started in 1861 with the establishment of a formation of 30 Hausa men by Mark Koskri, the acting governor of the Lagos colony. This grew in strength to a 100-man armed police force in 1862, and 600 men called the Armed Hausa Police Force in 1863, who were regarded as such because it consisted mainly of Hausa-speaking ex-slaves from Sierra Leone. The constabulary, also described as Glover's Hausas, after Captain John Glover, the administrator of the Lagos colony, raised to defend the colony of Lagos, was enlarged to become the Hausa Constabulary in 1879. Evolving with the imposed British criminal justice system was the enabling of a penal system that prompted the design and construction of prisons. While it is on record that some of the first formal public structures that were built in colonized territories were prisons, the manifestation of this in Lagos was in the 1872 construction of Her Majesty's Prison, alternately referred to as the Broad Street Prisons, and which was initially designed to hold about 20 prisoners. By 1960, when Nigeria finally gained her independence, the country had seen 15 governors, 4 lieutenant governors, and 3 governor generals. In all, Lagos had been under British rule for 100 years. Throughout its period of use from 1885, the Broad Street prisons held some of Nigeria's foremost activists and nationalists. Personalities such as Herbert Macaulay, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Lateef Jakonde, Michael Imodu, a former Labour leader, all served time there at one period or the other due to their political beliefs and activism. Herbert Macaulay was a political leader, civil engineer, and journalist reputed as being one of the fathers of Nigerian nationalism and activism in the anti-colonial struggle against the British in the first decades of the 20th century. He rose to become a determined opponent of the rule of the colonizers and argued against the expansion of the British administration, as this was detrimental to the interests of Nigerians who usually bore the tax burdens of such decisions. Pa Michael Imodu was the first leader of Nigeria's organized labor movement, whose involvement with the struggles of the working class for better remuneration and conditions of service straddled critical periods of the colonial rule and the country's early decades of independence administration. Chief Obafemi Awolowo, one of Nigeria's foremost political leaders, anti-colonial heroes, and statesmen, was held at the Broad Street Prison in 1963 while undergoing trial in a purported case of treasonable felony for conspiring to overthrow the federal government along with some other members of his Action Group political party. In his book, Adventures in Power, Book 1, My March Through Prison, Chief Awolowo recounts the nature of the gaol when he and his colleagues had to stay there. The cells in which we were a set of rooms opposite one another, with a long corridor between them. There were 2 doors to the corridor. They were both made of solid iron with huge iron bars to reinforce them from inside and from outside. Only one of them, the one which led to the prison compound, was in use when my colleagues were being brought here. The other one had not been in use since about 1870, after the abolition of slave trade in Lagos.
That was Ministry of Justice, where essentially justice was served. It's very close to prison, so you can see the relationship between the Ministry of Justice then and the prison yard. Then you have the Lion Building over there, of course, the police, just behind the trees there is the Lion Building. So you had justice all around you. If you look around you, you have all the vestiges of an open park, which is one of the things that Lagos needs as breathing space. But at the same time, this is history. There's a lot of stories to be told from here. From Mrs. Johnson to Obafemi Awolowo to Pa Imodu to Herbert Macaulay. Many people who were anti-colonialists and who resisted the colonial government. Several ideas were toyed around with as to what to do with the site. One being to extend Island Maternity Hospital into the site. And if you look back there, there's some cranes and other building equipment that came about from an era where there was a private developer who had planned to develop a high-rise office block within here. I understand Awolowo cursed this place. Chief Awolowo put a curse on this place. And I think part of the curse is why the site has not been developed all this time. looking at the plan, a few buildings automatically caught our attention. One, the records office. So we felt the records office was very symbolic. And because we thought of having a museum as part of this park, the records office readily became the representation for the museum. The old kitchen, because we had to have a food court. We used the prison to justify the location of our food court. And we had the gallows, which I equated to the gallows as going on stage. It was your final performance.
And the chain was not. And the doom was not the end of the beginning. The beginning of the end. Like a spell, it ravaged us. The shackling of freedom. The mind is engaged. We are plagued by the hailstone of curses. And the chain was not. The furious flight of freedom is closely far. And the chains were not. Freedom has fleeting feet, but captivity bolts faster. Freedom is truth, chain is lie. The long-awaited days that stabbed us are dead. Once upon the days, the golden gates of castration have been emasculated. They built monuments of shame on our imprisonment. They made for their key cathedrals of indignity. Our chi languishes in the hidden pit. Yet we shall don the melodic voice of the Gorgon. The second shall rejoice. The Omini shall flirt with the sticks. Our butter dance shall butter this. And the chain was chained. We were like they that dreamed. We herald the bittersweet taste of freedom.
The whole notion of the degradation of a people, the expropriation of the humanity of a people, is centered usually in a prison yard, the place of detention, of restraint, of the complete destruction, denial of human and societal volition. It's the irony, the paradox of that conversion into a place of creativity, of imagination, of excitement, with a corner for children, just converting restraint into freedom is, for me, one of the most marvelous statements that any former colonial people or any further occupied or in any way oppressed people can make.
Yeah, it's not just about the money spent. We should also think about the human capital spent, and not the immediate human capital. We should go back to the human capital that was paid by Chief Obafemi Awolowo and Chief Lateef Jakonde and other patriots who were imprisoned in the historical space now known as Freedom Park. We should also think about the human capital of other Nigerians that was paid in that space where their souls still dwell, even as we live today, in saving Nigeria from the claws of colonization, pushing us into post-colonialism and bringing us to this point today where we can now build such a space.
You are not just seeing a space, you're not just seeing facilities of halls and amphitheater and the rest of them. It's a place of history. I mean, there's a particular hall there, which is a museum, where you could see all the dug-out paraphernalia of slavery, chains and the rest of them, dug from the same site, and they are preserved there now as in a museum mode. The old prisons where the Awolowos, Zik and the rest of them, the father of Nigeria and the mother Nigerian state were kept. The prisons have been preserved.
We tried to capture the essence or the size of the cell blocks because each cell block was 4 feet by 8 feet, which is the size of a sheet of plywood. Within that was a bed, which is 1'6" by 6 feet, and a bucket. So we built something. We built a replica of the cells, so it gives you an idea of what the cells were like.
I don't believe I've ever entered the walls of this spot where we are right now. Well, of course, it was a very prominent, distinct, and slightly forbidding space. One just skirted around it, the walls of it was then known as Broad Street Prisons. It still is now, but although it's changed its name a couple of times. But this certainly is where the prison was. And you could say that the boundary of this, what I call this colonial space, the boundaries were, in my conception, like the Roman Catholic Church over there. Then you move along here, there was a secretariat, a very massive building where colonial, the home office and everything else were spaced. You move in that direction, the ports were there. I can see from here the Twin Towers, which I believe denoted which I believe dominated the old secretariat, or it's a building opposite the secretariat, separated by a street, and that must have been where the printers, the first, shall we say, government printers were located, the housing. About here was the General Hospital, it still is there, and then you move further in that direction, and there was the church. I think it was called St. Saviour's. It's called St. Saviour's Church now, but it was just known as a colonial church at the time, which meant it was strictly for whites, and it was not desegregated until agitation by some of the black elite of Lagos, who just refused to accept the continuity of this discrimination in the house of the Lord. A bit further towards this waterside, the beach, was the State House itself, where the governor used to stay there. Oh, there was one more, what you might call semi-colonial institution, and that's more significantly King's College on that side, King's College Lagos, which was a government college. And that, for me, was another bastion of colonial presence, because that's where the new clerical officers, the new bureaucrats, the new technocrats were educated in secondary school. So you could say that we're standing roughly at the center of what was the colonial establishment, the colonial circle, all right down here.
Everybody has seen a place for themselves for their particular area of interest. The artists have seen a space where they can come paint, where they can come exhibit their work. The musicians have found a stage that they can perform to a stage that's based around the gallows, where they can express themselves to a discerning public.
Ogun Abacha ó ṣojú yín jà àbí not be so make we say Ogun Abacha ó ṣojú rẹ̀ jà ìwọ nìkan ọ̀pá sójà mẹ́fà o ọ̀rọ̀ ọ̀gá o padà sẹ́yìn o padà sẹ́yìn o wá fèwé bòra.
Poets have come to do book readings. Dancers have found space on stage in the amphitheater. We've had a very interesting international water festival dance. We've had the Black Heritage Festival. And I know very soon we shall have the World Tourism Day, as well as Lagos Jazz Festival. There's a Freedom Park Festival coming up. I mean, I think it would be a very successful, not event space, but a cultural space.
I've never seen a particular sport where you see young Nigerians, I mean an uncontrolled space, where you see young Nigerians gather and they're just expressing themselves in whatever way. They want to do their visual arts activities, they want to do their theater, they want to engage in book reading and the rest of them. So that's the way I'm beginning to see the Freedom Park, and I'm not sure I've even seen enough of it.
Colors of culture abound in my heart. Griots, wordsmiths, nimble feet, and sonorous voices, all fused in the muse with nature, serve their dishes. Savor the taste of liberty, where once freedom choked in paralyzed stupor. Here, all expressions are robed in freedom. To live is to be free. Sing then the song of freedom. The chained garment is tattered.
Prof has magnanimously agreed to loan from time to time different collections to Lagos State. And on the basis of that, Lagos State agreed to put up a building to house those collections that will come at different times. Nothing permanent, I presume. It won't be permanent.
How can you get permanent? Go permanent.
I'm not sure you're allowed to see that on camera. You're not allowed to see that on camera. So I presume, would that be, I mean, I asked initially in Lagos State, what size of exhibit would we be preparing for, should we cater to? They didn't seem to know.
No,
They just
they
said,
have no idea.
come up with an exhibit, come up with a building, come up with a building.
Mm.
So I'm not sure whether the building is too large or too small.
No.
Or
Let's think more in terms of a room.
Okay.
A gallery space.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be all offices there and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah.
So we're thinking in terms of a gallery space. And as far as exhibitions are concerned, for instance, half the floor of that would be quite sufficient.
Okay.
Because it's a moving exhibition. It's a moving exhibition.
Okay.
So half should be quite sufficient. Half
We
of the floor.
also hope to have a corner dedicated to you,
Mhm.
your works, your history, and your works, your literary works.
Mhm.
I mean, like all the books and everything would be
Mhm.
on a particular wall in the lobby
Mhm.
area. So that's like a particular corner dedicated to you and your work,
I see.
not your collections. Collection
I
is
see.
an ongoing thing. So
Uh-huh.
anybody
Okay.
come in there will realize the importance of your person to this gallery.
Well, in that case, you might need the whole floor. So, so one side is a moving exhibition, the other one is permanent,
Permanent.
because you can get copies, translations,
okay.
books, and everything. Like that.
The
Yeah,
collection
that's
would
okay.
be mostly, or will it be a mixture of paintings and sculpture?
It'd be mostly sculptures, because
Mostly sculpture.
I'm mostly a sculptural
Okay, that's
kind of person, and but it'll be thematic. I think it'll be thematic.
Okay.
And have bronzes, around miniatures at one time, masks, and other the paintings, of course, in our time. It'll be a mixture.
Dance now in regalia of liberty. Stomp, stamp, clap. For the clamp is gone. In here, you are free to be free. My name is Freedom Park. For posterity, I leave my mark. I remember the ghosts of the past. Raise then freedom's mast. Make merry, my blooming guest, if freedom is your quest.
It's an it's an ancient idea out of not so much in every cloud there's a silver lining, but actually to convert the cloud into a silver, a new platform for emergence of a people and for the assertion of their humanity.
Is an existential space where freedom is synonymous with culture, and culture is synonymous with freedom, because culture is what defines the human spirit, the social space in which human beings congregate, agree to live together, and agree to work together, agree to build for development, is where you find culture. Because when they come together, the social state is being cultured by their moral agreements, by the need of the human spirit to be free, which means the liberty to be curious, to ask questions, to protest when injustice is being done, to seek ultimate freedom, yet living within the boundaries of our forehand defined cultural parameters.